Thank you so much for having us. We always like to present because then we get to relive our trips all around the world. In fact, we just got back from Easter Island last Monday, and we're going to put a program together on Easter Island because it is fairly remote, 5 hours from the Chilean.
It's the second farthest piece of land from another piece of land in the world.
Okay. So
You're
today
probably
we're
wondering what number one is. Of course. There's an island called Tristan da Cunha, which is sort of in the middle between Antarctica, Africa, and South America. Right, that is a little bit farther. A lot of people think of Easter Island as being just off the coast of Chile, but it's 3,000 miles and 5-hour flight from Chile. So,
Okay, so today we're going to start in Chile because that's where this trip started. We started in Santiago, which is the capital of Chile, and you can see that Chile is a very long, skinny country, and the widest part is 64 miles across, and it's how many? 1,200 miles from the top to the bottom. At the north is the Atacama Desert, and then all the way down is Tierra del Fuego, which is the bottom of South America. So we started in Santiago, and we took some side trips in Santiago, and then went down the coast on a ship to Puerto Montt, and then to Puerto Natales, and then to Punta Arenas, which is the where the voyage to Antarctica start. We need to tell you that we had scheduled just a trip to Antarctica, and they called us from the boat company and said that the ship, there was something wrong with the ship, and in place of just going to Antarctica, they said, would you mind doing the Chilean coast? It'll be free for you because of your inconvenience of having to change ships. So we said, oh, sure.
we were so inconvenienced.
We were
I can't
very
begin to tell you.
inconvenienced. So
Okay, so we're going to start here. We were just here last week, and it's interesting. This is in Santiago, Chile, and
You need to keep the mic near your mouth.
I know you're going to be telling me that 20 times. I know you are. I'm not used to using a mic. All right, this is the presidential palace, and actually you cannot stand where we're standing right now to get this picture because there have been a lot of protests in Santiago, Chile. Not the rest of Chile, just Santiago, and only one little part of Santiago. All right, but I'm glad we got the view we did. Okay.
in Santiago, you can see all the Spanish influence when the Spaniards came in. And next to the churches and all the Spanish architect, you see great big tall skyscrapers. So this is a opposite of each other. While we were in Santiago, we took a trip up into the mountains to Portillo. When Jim and I were a little bit younger, we coached the Andover High School ski team. And our skiers would go to Portillo, Chile during the summer to practice, only in Bloomfield Hills. But, and so we wanted to see where they practiced, so we took a trip up the mountain. And you can see there are a lot of switchbacks, 23 switchbacks going up the mountain.
This is like going up to Machu Picchu for those who've been there, right? Same thing. Okay.
And a lot of traffic, truck traffic, because this is the only way that the trucks from Argentina can get to Chile and vice versa. So they're carrying produce and whatever.
It seems like it would take a long, long time to get up the mountain or down the mountain, but they do move the trucks into the right lane so regular traffic can pass by. The group that we went with on this tour was called Hurtigruten, and that is a Norwegian line, very good line, right? And they spend their summers down in Antarctica and their winters back home when it's
No,
summer.
opposite, Jim.
Okay, you understand what I'm saying. Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, and this is the ski resort of Portillo where our racers used to come. Now, this was during their summer, so there's not a lot of snow. And this was the Inca Lake where you looked out from the ski resort. Of course, in the winter, it's covered ice. There's supposedly an Inca princess who comes out at night and walks around the shore.
We waited and waited. Okay, nothing. Okay.
And then on the way back from Portillo, we stopped at a few wineries, and you've all heard of the wonderful Chilean wines.
And this is the highest peak. This is Aconcagua. This is the largest mountain in South America, little over 16,000 feet.
And then we went to Vina del Mar, which is the gambling capital of South America. It's where all the people from Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, Chile come to gamble. And this building was damaged during the last hurricane.
Okay, it wasn't hurricane, earthquake. Where the
earthquake.
earthquake was, if you picture that map at the beginning of the long country of Chile, Santiago was in the middle, and Concepcion, where the earthquake was, it was like a 8.9 or 9 point, one of the biggest earthquakes in the last 20 years, is just south of Santiago, and Viña del Mar is just north of Santiago.
And from there, we went to Valparaiso, which is the port for Santiago. And we boarded our ship. And you can see it was a beautiful day, and we all had our patches and our seasick things ready for the Drake Passage, not thinking that we would get into a storm right outside of Valparaiso.
Yeah, when you're going to Antarctica, that's the last thing you think of is a storm on the Pacific. You don't even think about the Pacific Ocean. You think of Drake Passage, getting sick, rocking and rolling all the way down. Well, this was the next day. We had 30-foot waves. We were one side and the other side. It was amazing. Everybody on the ship got sick.
And
everyone.
We had bought some wine bottles to use on the ship, and those wine bottles were rolling back and forth, making us even sicker.
That didn't help while you're lying in bed,
But there was one person who survived.
A little German lady.
And she went to the lecture, and there were lectures in two different places. One was for an English lecture, and one was for a German lecture. And this was a German lady who survived seasickness.
Yeah. I'm not sure the teacher ever showed up, the lecturer, actually. Okay. Now, we've gone down the coast. We've gone down to the city of Puerto Montt. Now, Puerto Montt is a German town. Right? There are a lot of Italian, German, Spanish, even Croat towns all throughout Chile, because during World War II, many people moved from Europe to Chile and Argentina to establish communities there, and those are still going, and they're bigger than ever. Right? This is our ship in the background there. Right? It was a fairly small ship. It's not one of these big ones. It was about 170 passengers, I would say, right? Which comes up later on. It's very important, actually.
What month? We were there in November.
So it was spring, for them. We tend to go in the spring and the fall. Most of you probably do too. Okay. We're passing by a large island off the coast of Chile called Chiloé, and this is the Chaitén volcano. There are many volcanoes throughout Ecuador and Peru and Chile. And this is one of the largest ones, but it's not active. Most of them are inactive.
And as we were going down the inland waterway, there was a shipwreck here that had gone aground in 1942, and instead of saving the ship, they just left it there. It was quite eerie to see it.
It's kind of eerie when you come out of the fog, and you see a big freighter, an old rusted freighter sitting there. And we saw these several times throughout the trip.
This was the port of Nogales, which
Puerto
is
Natales.
which is Christmas port. It was discovered at Christmas time, and
Right.
it is Italian. So the whole population is Italian.
It's interesting, as you're going down, Chile is an extremely organized, clean country, right? All the towns are clean. They're mostly small. Most everybody speaks English or some degree of English or has a friend who speaks English. So it's really not a problem going there, even now with a few protests in the street, okay?
And of course, we had to have pisco sours. Now, in Peru, the pisco sours do not have foam egg white on the top.
They
but
do.
in Chile,
They do have egg white.
oh, they do have egg white. In Chile, they do not have egg white. So that's how you could tell the difference between Chilean and Peruvian pisco sours.
Although last week when we were down there, Chile had egg white on the top. So, okay. So.
We stopped at, we did an excursion out into the countryside on the Patagonia to Torres del Paine.
Okay, this is Torres del Paine is a very jagged. It's a new section of mountains in the world. That's why they're so jagged. All the new ones. I think of out west.
Tetons.
The Tetons are relatively new also, and those are very jagged peaks, as opposed to the Appalachian, which are basically flat. Okay, so wonderful place to go for hiking, for rock climbing, for mountain climbing. Not a lot of skiing down here, though. And there are several resorts all around Torres del Paine. The word Torres del Paine means torres, towers of P-A-I-N-E. Now, a lot of people think that P-A-I-N-E was a person, Mr. Payne, all right? But it comes from pena, which is like hurt or ache in Spanish, all right? And this is where Paine, also a native Mapuche Indian word, is very close to Paine, and it means blue. So either one works, okay? Everywhere you go, it's a postcard. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous park. I'm just sorry that people can't get there more easily. Yeah, it would be busy if it were.
There are 5 big peaks. One of them is hidden behind the other one there, but you can see how jagged they are.
And you can climb up to the top. Right, here's another view. You notice things are starting to get a little windier down here. All right, and although we really didn't notice a big difference in temperature, it's probably about 50, 60 degrees from what it was, here. Now, let's talk a little bit about, this is it's called the Estrecho de Magallanes, which is the Strait of Magellan. This is how Magellan came through, going from east to west, and this is the Beagle Channel down here. All of this, basically an island, is Tierra del Fuego, land of fire. The reason it got the name Land of Fire is because of all the Indians. When the Europeans came in, a lot of the Indians went down to the coast and they set fires to ward off the Europeans. Obviously that didn't work, all right, as there are no Mapuche Indians left, okay? So, okay, and we're going to be going to here in just a moment. This is Cabo de Hornos, which is Cape Horn, all right? There's a little teeny island here, and luckily we were able to land on it. Captain Cook wasn't able to land on Cape Horn, so.
As we're going further and further south, we're seeing a lot more ice on the water.
Okay, now we're starting to go into some of the channels, especially the Strait of Magellan. Here you can see the land down here. Okay, a lot of glaciers, a lot of mountains, a lot of volcanoes. All the glaciers are receding. They've gone back miles in terms of warm weather. I mean, this is why we were kind of shocked. We were expecting to go to Antarctica and it was going to be like 20 degrees below zero or something like that, and we were ready for that. right? But it really was about 15, 20 above zero most of the time that we were there. Yeah. It was about 5 years ago. Okay. And here you have the wind, and there's a storm kicking up, which we ran into a lot. This gives you an idea of the receding shoreline. The glacier up at the top originally was down here and probably 2 or 3 miles out into the water. So where we're taking the picture from right now, it has receded that much, probably in the last 20, 25 years. I know a lot of people don't believe in global warming, but we've been to the North Pole, we've been to the South, and I mean, we see it everywhere. So, okay.
Again, another ship.
Again, it's kind of eerie when you come up on this in the water. You know? Another volcano. This is all on the Strait of Magellan. This
And
is Punta
then
Arenas.
we got to Punta Arenas, and this is where we started our journey to Antarctica.
Ushuaia. Okay, this is the southernmost city in the world, Punta Arenas, Chile. Right, it's a large city, probably about maybe 500,000 people, but again, neat, tidy, clean, English-speaking, and Spanish, and German, and Croat from Croatia.
Where
Ushuaia? Ushuaia is in Argentina, actually. It's across the border. That's where we went from here. We went from here to Ushuaia. That's where we actually caught the boat. Okay. Everything that goes down to Antarctica goes through the city of Ushuaia. Yeah. Okay.
one of the excursions we took off the ship was to a sheep farm. And instead of them being called gauchos, they're called huasos in Chile, but they're the same thing.
Yeah, they wear the same thing, they talk the same way, they do the same things.
And the barbecue in Chile is just meat cooked on an open fire. It's not with barbecue sauce on it. It's just plain meat.
We think we know so much. Yeah, okay. Here's another example of the receding glacier. The glacier was where I'm standing, and I'm using a zoom lens to get to that.
One of the thrills of our trip was being able to land on Cape Horn. So first of all, the scientists from our ship took Zodiacs to see if it was safe for us to land, and it was, so we landed on Cape Horn.
And this is at the very tip of South America, right? Most people do not have a chance to land here because the seas are so rough in the Drake Passage. We happened to hit a calm day, and it was so funny watching all of the scientists running around. They had never been able to land there, you know, and they were so excited with their binoculars and cameras, and they got up to the top and they're taking pictures of lichen, and they were sitting there, what are you doing?
So once we got to the shore, we had a long climb to the top of Cape Horn.
This is another reason why people don't go up to Cape Horn. Right, it is a long way up, and you go up halfway and you're so exhausted, you go right back to the Zodiac and back to the boat. Right, but we did make it to the top, and when you make it to the top, it's basically just a flat top island, not a lot there at all, a few scrub trees, but it's used as a storage island for shipping. When the helicopters come into the ship, they will pick up what we would call a boxcar, the top of the boxcar, filled with goods. They would fly it to the top of Cape Horn, and they would have rows and rows and rows of boxcars on the top. It's not a very beautiful island in any way. Oh. Okay.
You can see our ship way out. It's the furthest one out.
Right here.
And that other ship there is a Chilean military ship. But we took the Zodiacs from our ship to the shore, and you can see it. And at the top, there were all kinds of albatrosses.
Okay, and?
There is a statue there for the albatross. If you look at the vacant part of the statue, you can see an albatross flying.
You see the bird in there? Yeah.
And the
This is
pole,
about the only thing on the island beside boxcars. Okay? That's why I don't have a lot of pictures of the top of the island, okay?
and at the bottom of this statue it says, I am the albatross that waits for you at the end of the earth. I am the forgotten soul of the dead sailors who crossed Cape Horn from all the seas of the world. But they did not die in the furious waves. Today they fly in my wings to eternity in the last trough of the Antarctic winds.
Okay. It's a really beautiful monument. It's a very, very nice monument. Not a lot of people there seeing it, though. Okay. Now, we're heading down to Antarctica. This is a pain. Okay. You can see on this map, there are several things I want to tell you about this. This is where we are. We're right at the tip of what is Argentina. Chile is the other half right here. All right, we leave from Ushuaia. You go over to the peninsula, which is here. Right? That is where all boats go to Antarctica. You cannot land anywhere else on Antarctica except the peninsula. You see how close South America is compared to Africa. This is South Africa up here and Madagascar. All right, and here you have Australia and Tasmania down here. This is still much closer. And yet, it still takes 2 days to go from Ushuaia to the peninsula of Antarctica.
The only other way to get onto the continent is by plane, and that's how most of the scientists get there, is by plane.
Right. Another question people ask is, how do you tell when you're at the South Pole right here, how do you tell which area is north, south, east, and west? Well, if you line it up like this map is, this is north. The peninsula is northwest of the South Pole. This would be south, of course, and east. Okay, but that's how you tell directions. Now, another thing, by the way, Antarctica is the highest, the coldest, and the driest continent in the world. Right, now, people wonder, how could it be the highest when you've got Mount Everest and K2 hanging out there? They take an average of all the mountains in a certain continent. All right, the average, all right, of Antarctica is higher than the average of Asia in this case. So, okay. Now, you'll notice on this map, it says Southern Ocean. Some people, maybe when we were growing up, we called it the Antarctic Ocean. Right? There really is no Antarctic Ocean. There is an area that blends out into the ocean. This area right here, the blue, darker blue to the light blue, this is called the area of convergence. Right? That's where the salt water of the Indian, Pacific, and Atlantic Ocean hits the clear water
Fresh
of
water.
Antarctica. So it creates what you might call is a little strip of ocean all around Antarctica. That is the Antarctic Ocean. Sometimes they don't even call it that. It doesn't make it that level. Okay? Palmer Station is right up here. And then McMurdo is down here. We have, the U.S. has 2 bases. We'll talk about that in a second.
Microphone, Jim.
Microphone, Jim. Go ahead. Okay.
Okay,
Now,
in order to cross the Drake Passage, it
Sorry.
takes 2 days. So you get your seasick patches on and you take your seasick pills, because there are 2 ways to cross. One is called Drake Lake, which means it's calm, and the other is called Drake Shake, which means it is very treacherous. We had 2 days of Drake Lake going down, 1 day of Drake Lake going back, and 1 day of Drake Shake, at which point the waiters were wetting down the tablecloths so that the plates would stay in their place. Everything was rolling off the table, but we weren't seasick because we were prepared with our patches.
just watch out for the Pacific Ocean, okay? When you get off. Okay, this is the peninsula where you can land. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about ships when you get down there. everything, your enjoyment of Antarctica depends on the size of trip that you go, boat that you go on, or ship, right? If you go from, what is it, 1 to
Up-
200?
Up to 200 people on your ship. You can make as many landings as the captain says it's possible. We made seven out of 8.
Okay, and the eighth one actually turned into a really great experience. We'll show you that. All right, but we
if-
did land 7 times. That's really unusual to
If
land.
your ship has between 200 and 600 people, you can only land at certain spots. If your ship has over 600 people, you just cruise by. You don't get off the ship.
Yeah, there's no way they could land a ship with, over, let's say, 600,000 people, to have them go stand on the shore, basically. Right. So we just lucked out on this, which is great.
No, because of the environmental issues.
There's a lot of environmental issues involved with that many people being on the island, and there is definitely a problem with the depth. Yeah, those big ships can't get in that close. Even with tenders, you can't get in. Okay.
Along the way, we ran into some whales, not literally, but we saw some whales, some sperm whales and minke whales. And they were quite close.
Yeah. Picture me, Captain Ahab.
And this was our first sight of Antarctica.
Now, what we need to tell you about Antarctica is, number one, it's dirt, it's land. It is not ice and snow, all right? It is a lot of land. It's like taking a lot of islands and connecting them together with ice and snow,
Jim,
which gives us the feeling that whenever you see the map, it's all white, so we think it's all ice.
The microphone.
Can I just talk louder? Does that help? Can you hear me back there?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Fine. I'll be better next time. Okay. What was I saying about the?
About Antarctica is land and.
Oh, that's what I know what it was. Okay. Antarctica itself is land surrounded by ice and water, whereas the North Pole is ice and water surrounded by the land of Russia, Canada, Scandinavia. Okay, so and polar bears are in the north, penguins are in the south. Okay, but keep that in mind that this is all land that is connected by ice sheets, ice shelves. And here again, this emphasizes it even more, the fact that it's land.
When we made landings, there were 5 different groups, and there were only 20 in each group. So they would call, like we were at Group A. So we would get on our long johns, our waterproof pants, our Wellingtons, and as many sweaters as we wanted, and our jackets. And then we would get on our life vests, and we would go downstairs. We had to wash our boots as we were getting off. They were sprayed with a sanitizer, and we would get into the Zodiac. But before we got into the Zodiac, the scientists would go ashore to be sure it was safe for our landing, and they would also take tents and food goods onto shore in case we were stranded on shore. So we would get into the Zodiacs and go ashore.
You're on shore for about 30 minutes each group. And if you start with the blue group or number 1 or whatever, the next time you go for a landing, you'll move down to the end, and number 2 will move up. So everybody gets a chance to be number 1 or number 2 on shore, right? But we found that, we did not need all the sweaters that we thought we would have needed. Now, you will need a parka of some kind for sure, because we're talking 10, 15 degrees, okay? So.
This was the first landing that we made, and we saw all the penguins, but we could smell them before we saw them. It was very odorific.
All of you have smelled sulfuric acid before.
Sulfur.
It's the same. Smelled great, just great. And you knew where they were, okay? You'll notice that there's nothing green on here. There's a type of lichen and a type of
Algae.
all right, that grows on Antarctica, and that is it, right? So all of the nests here are made out of rocks, all right? And we'll talk about this in a minute, the making of the nest, okay?
Here he is, both male and female sit on the nests. So we didn't know if this was a male or a female, but whoever is sitting on an egg there.
Okay, and it's all rocks.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
you keep talking about the temperature as mild as it was, but what was the wind speed?
Wind was probably about, I'm going to say 20 or 30 miles per hour. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, you'll see. I go for a swim in the Antarctic, and that. I can tell you the wind speed then. Okay, did you?
No, he's a silly boy.
Oh, crazy. Nuttiest things I've ever done. However, it was easy to do.
This is a
Explain
Gen 2 penguin. And on shore, we also saw
These are Welland's seals, right?
Weidel seals.
And there are rules that are established by an organization of tourism, international tourism organization, that you can only have so many people on the land at any one time, in one spot at any one time, right? And for a certain amount of time at any one time, right? And here they also give us rules of how close you can get to penguins, how close you can get to the seals. The penguins, go ahead.
The penguins could touch us, but we could not touch them. So they would come up and sort of peck at us, but we couldn't touch them
I mean,
or pet them.
They don't bite or anything like that. All right.
Yeah,
And with
but
these,
with these, you had to be 10 feet away because they can attack.
yeah, you definitely need a zoom lens. They move very, very quickly. They're like hippos, you know, in Africa. People don't. They assume they're big, therefore they can't run, and they're one of the fastest animals. Okay. This is my brother. Okay. This is my brother from another mother. Okay.
This was a king penguin, and he was lost. We don't know where his tribe or his group was, but he just stood there and was looking around. I don't know if he ever found his group.
There's nothing worse than being a king penguin in a colony of gentoos, you know? Okay.
As you can see, that this is a huge penguin colony, and it looks like rocks, which it is, but there's at least 100 penguins there in the colony. This is why you can't land other than on the peninsula, because the ice sheets are so high.
And some of the mountains come right down to the shore. You know, there's no way to get up there except by plane, obviously. So.
This is another example of why you can't land there. This was a crazy guy who had sailed a small ship across the Drake Passage all by himself.
Okay. Another crazy guy.
One day the scientists had gone ashore and they said it was too dangerous for us to land. So they decided they were going to take us all out in the Zodiacs and do an explore of the icebergs. So that's what we did. Because there was so much ice buildup on the shore that if the Zodiacs had gone in, they might have ripped a hole in the Zodiac.
Okay, so this is our ship in a snowstorm. This is the ship in a storm. You know.
And this is the ship after the storm. There was a hot tub on the ship, but not very many people used it. It was not for sunning.
I did after getting out of the water. Okay.
So we went on the Zodiacs in and amongst the icebergs.
This was just fascinating. It was beautiful. We went through all little inlets and islets between the icebergs. We went through tunnels. You know, it was really quite an experience. So even though we didn't have a chance to be on the land, once you've seen one beach, they sort of look the same, actually. So
And while we were going on this excursion, there was a scientist at the front of the Zodiac with a very long pole. So he was testing to see how deep the water was and where the iceberg ended, because you know that most of the iceberg is underneath the water rather than on top.
yeah, you hear all sorts of numbers. It could be 8/9 or 9/10 or, you know, 5/6. You know, is underwater and the rest is above. So you really have to be careful, especially taking Zodiacs if they're rubber, you know, across here.
There were all kinds of birds. Now, we're not birders, but this was a snowy petrel. And every time there was a different kind of bird, the captain would come over the loudspeaker and say, so-and-so on the left side, and everybody would rush over, and we were thinking that the ship was going to go like this.
So another snowy petrel, you know. Okay, it was great. It was fun, actually, going from side to side doing that. So, okay. Now, in this view, there are two things we want to show you. First of all the brown spots you see here, all of this, those are penguin colonies. All right, it looks like chunks of dirt. All right, it's all penguin colonies. And this is the way you see them all over the continent. All right, and you'll notice the lines coming down here. All right, it looks like a fan up here or a delta even. All right, and it all winds up down to this area. Well, when penguins are making their nest, now the nests are made out of rocks, okay? They will find a trail. They will walk all the way, slide, fall, tumble, all right, down one of these little lines till they get
Pathways.
to the bottom. They will pick up one rock. They will walk all the way up, all right, and deposit it. They will then walk all the way back, pick up one rock, and go. It's amazing to watch this. And they must do it 1,000 times, I swear, you know, to make those rock nests, you know, for the birds. All right, but that's what those lines are. And here you have a picture of them going up. Well, we have a couple going down, and the rest of them are walking back up. Can you imagine how exhausting that's got to be? But they seem to be fine with it.
And this was a gym penguin coming down.
Yeah, I decided to come down one. It wasn't one that was being used, believe me. This was an old one that was being filled in. So I just had to try it, see how long it took. Now, here is Antarctica again. This is the peninsula, right? And here's the rest of it. Back in 1961, 12 countries got together and they formed the Antarctic Organization, which controls what goes on in Antarctica, what kind of buildings, what kind of everything you can do in Antarctica. This doesn't have to do with tourism, number of people on boats landing, things like that. It's a different organization. But here you have the New Zealand claim and the Australian claim. So it's divided into pieces of pie. It was originally 12 pieces of pie. 12 countries owned the land in Antarctica.
Or
All right.
claimed the land.
Claimed the land, exactly. I was going to hesitate about saying owned, because you really don't own Antarctica. But now there are over 45 countries that claim part of Antarctica, but they have to make the request to one of the 12 countries that were originally there to use their section, right, for their base. Okay. This is McMurdo was right here. Palmer is up closer to the peninsula itself, right?
But in order to get to those bases, you fly in. You don't take a boat.
Now, when we were here, we had a chance to go to 2 bases. So we wanted to show you what a base was like down there.
This was Vernadsky Basin, or base, which is Ukrainian. And so we were invited to come ashore.
Right, which is really, you know, kind of a special thing, you know, for us, because that is the whole base. There are houses for living. There are houses for eating. Just a storage of everything. We're going to show you some pictures of the inside in a second now.
So we went ashore.
Right, there's the Ukrainian flag. They were so eager to see a human being. There were there were 24 men and 1 woman at this base for a year, okay, doing research. Okay, now here we go into, this is one of the offices, and the computers. They have computers everywhere down there. Library.
This was the hospital room.
Yeah, you must have a doctor on call at all times, at whatever base it is.
This was the equipment room, and the different bases would visit each other, like on holidays or have parties. So they would go, either use cross-country skis, snowshoes, or snowmobiles.
Right. And it's interesting, all the bases down there, if they're within decent distance, you know, they have parties together. You know, they celebrate holidays together. It doesn't matter which country you're in. You know, you just get together all the time, which is nice. Well, you need to see people, you know. Okay. Now,
This is what
this is exactly what you think it is.
I was told that if I
This.
donated my bra, that I would get free vodka. So I took one from the ship. I didn't take it off me in the middle of and I gave it to them expecting a bottle of vodka. I got a shot of vodka.
So, but you can see they've collected them for quite a while. All right. I can't even imagine what this woman looks like. But anyhow, okay. But they get a big kick out of this. I don't think they invite too many people in, but still. But they have a game room there.
Well,
You know,
we are
nice.
in the game room.
Yeah, we are. You were.
With the vodka and a pool table and a ping pong table.
And they have
So-
radios and TVs and, you know, not large screen, but they can pick up everything.
This is leaving the Ukrainian base.
Now, sometimes we wear Wellington boots because many times you don't have a dock. You have to step into the water to get into the Zodiac. All right, so these go up to about here, up to there.
These are some of the scientists that were on the trip. There was a geography expert, a botanist, a geologist.
Yeah. Into rocks. This fellow was from Norway. He was from Svalbard, which is way north of Norway, where the polar bears are. He had never been to the south, so he was so excited, you know, coming down here and seeing all that we saw. And this is the crew. She was the lead scientist, actually.
And the other base that we visited was the British base. And this is no longer in use. It's more like a museum. It's called
Port Lacroix.
Fort Lacroix. And there were all kinds of penguins that we had to step around to get into the building.
It's the British flag.
And this has been left like it was in the 1950s, so it's very old inside.
It's a museum, but they still have to run the base. They have to keep it clean. So there are 4 women there that take care of it for a year, taking care of this empty base, right? And we brought the man on our ship, you know, to be with them for the year. So this is where they sleep. You see, they sleep over here, they eat here, and there are several other rooms, you know, too.
This was their communication room, which wasn't very up to date at all.
How many ships will stop there in a year? Probably about, I'm going to say 10, 15. That's it. So they really need to get to another base. Yeah, yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
This is as we're leaving Fort LaCroix. Now, this is what is called the needle. Some crazy pilot has flown his plane between the two.
So they thought it was threading a needle, so it's the devil's needle now. All right. And where we're going into is called Desperation Bay. All right. And this is the crater of a volcano. If you can picture a volcano like this, and one side of it collapses and allows the water to come in and fill it. Right? That's the situation we have here. We're in half of a volcano crater. Okay, just so.
And this was an old whaling station, so we're coming up to the old whaling station where we made our landing. And it's in disrepair. Whaling was stopped in 1961.
Right. But the big period for whaling was between about 1894 and 1920, actually. So.
And of course, the people who lived there at that whaling station, some of them died, and this was the cemetery.
Now, this is where I went swimming. What they did, they asked how many people out of the 174, I think it was, wanted to go swimming, and there were 7 of us. It was me and, 4 Norwegians and 3 Germans, I think. So like that. That doesn't add up to 7, does it? Whatever. You know what I'm saying. Okay. First, they would have the Zodiac come in early, and the scientists would be on that. They would dig a hole here or on land, and they would let it fill with water. That temperature right now is about 250 degrees. Remember, this is a volcano. It is an active volcano. All right, so it is hot. The beach is hot. You don't have to worry about standing on it with your boots, but you can definitely feel warmth when you touch the sand. Right? Then what they will do, once they have this, once they have the hot water filled, they will dig a trench from the hot water into the Antarctic Ocean, if you want to call it that, all right, to allow the cold water to mix with the hot water. All right. It's like cheating. Right? So I went in here, and I was able to slowly swim out into the colder and colder water. And I could go out as far as I really wanted to. Right? It was still crazy, though. Okay. I did get a certificate, though, for it. Okay. Huh?
No.
No, I was in a bathing suit.
Swimsuit.
That's all. Not a Speedo, but a bathing suit, you know.
Now this
Speedos.
was on shore, and these are all the oil barrels that have been broken on shore.
By winds, by storm, etc. So this is how I got to shore, and then I stripped down with the other 6 rather. And this is going into the Antarctic. It was cold. The wind was really unbearable. That was about 30, 40 miles an hour at 15 degrees temperature, I would say. So although it wasn't as bad getting into the water because of the wind as it was getting out of the water and trying to dress in that temperature and that wind.
And everybody ran behind the old oil barrels. So I went behind the oil barrels, and I'm holding up a big towel so Jim could have some privacy. And I looked around, and everybody's standing there nude. So I said, "Here's your towel. I'm going on."
One of her most embarrassing moments. Okay. So, anyway.
This is the only thing that grows on Antarctica, lichen and algae.
Now
These are some elephant seals. And the reason they're called elephant seals is when they are sexually aroused, their nose becomes very long, like an elephant.
Right. And this also shows you why you can't land in certain places because of the ice buildup that might cut into the zodiacs. Okay, here's an elephant seal. Now again, I'm standing quite a ways back because they can move very, very fast. Here's another one. He's got his mouth open. Here's the nose up here. And they mix with penguins very easily. The only predators that penguins have down in Antarctica would be the tiger seal, right? That's the tiger seal's favorite meal is penguin. So you see these elephant seals lying everywhere. You can see an awful lot on the island of South Georgia also if you go down there. Okay.
This is just to show you the runoff from the mountains of water melt, but also you can see way in the background there are some scientists, and they would go ashore and make a line where we could not cross because they didn't want to lose any of us. So at either end of the shore there would be scientists saying, don't go any further.
Yeah, but there was quite a lot of land that you could walk on. I mean, it would take a long time to walk from one end to the other end of the sand. Okay.
Because they were afraid you would get lost.
Just and danger, possibly. Yeah. Yeah, we really we showed this because of the global warming, the rivers and lakes everywhere in Antarctica. There was a chunk of Antarctica that broke off. It's the size of Delaware. It broke off 2 years ago, actually. So, and again, this is another reason why you can't land, why you wouldn't be able to land. Right. And here we are on land, obviously. This is not the place where I went swimming. Okay. But again, I do want to emphasize the fact that Antarctica is land surrounded by ice and water. Okay.
The penguins were happy.
Yeah.
Now we're
heading back toward the Drake Passage, and again on the way back we had one lake and we had one shake. So again on the way out, the rocks, the mountains. The mountains are extremely high. I mean, I'm talking like between 5,000 and I'd say 15,000. So when you get the average, that's why Antarctica is considered the highest continent. Okay. I know a lot of people wonder why we went to Antarctica, and it really is because it's there. Because it's just kind of neat to be able to say you've gone there, and it's a really unique experience. It's the same with Easter Island. We probably spent more time in the air than we did on the island, but you can do it in 3 days. Okay, and this is on the way out again.
And it was our seventh continent, so.
Yeah. This is the town of Ushuaia. All right, this is in Argentina, and from here we flew back to Buenos Aires, in Argentina. Right.
This is the Rose Palace in Argentina, where Evita stood on the balcony and sang, "Don't cry for me, Argentina." I tried to get up there, but they wouldn't let me.
That's really not true. She didn't really do that. Okay. So
this is a pedestrian street in Buenos Aires, and it's on this street that there is one of only 3 kosher McDonald's in the world. There is a high population of Jewish people in Buenos Aires, along with Italians.
Italian and Germans. It would surprise you how many Italians, Germans there are in Buenos Aires. In Brazil. In Brazil, we speak Portuguese. Yeah. So.
This was the Recoleto Cemetery, and all the rich people built their mausoleums above the ground. And you can
see the casket in some. And this is the burial place of Juan Perón, and of course Evita Perón is down here, on the other side, right?
and that's Evita's.
Now, this is called Caminitos. Caminitos is a little section of Buenos Aires, which is where the Navy guys, all the sailors hung out. All right, and they still do, actually. And other people hang out there too. The women on the balconies and down below.
The ladies of the night.
Yes, right. And the reason this is all different colors is because when the ships stop here, usually they paint their ships sometime at sea, and they have a lot of paint left over, so they have painted all these buildings all these bright colors, which is kind of, it's nice. This is where the tango started. All right,
Well-
this is where the girls taught the sailors tango. All right, and everything in Buenos Aires is tango, if you've been there. Okay.
Pictures of people tangoing.
We had
It-
people dancing in the hallways in our hotel, or showing us, trying to show us how. Of course, you go to a tango club. We actually took tango lessons. The only problem we had was Py trying to put her leg on my shoulder. Okay, she finally got it there, but she was there for a long time. Okay.
And with that, we'll tango out of here.
Do you have